Now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Yesterday, a Chicago jury found actor Jussie Smollett guilty on all charges as related to the felony disorderly conduct regarding the false police reports he made that he was the victim of a hate crime in January 2019. Now, back in 2019, your Jussie Smollett alleged that he had been assaulted by some Trump MAGA supporters who poured bleach on him and hung a noose around his neck. And your Smollett hoped that people would get so emotional about hearing about this racist incident that it would lead to him being able to get sympathy for himself, and that this would raise his profile high enough that he would be able to negotiate a pay raise and be able to get more screen time on the show Empire he was starring on at the time. However, as police began doing their investigation into the details that Jussie Smollett alleged transpired during that alleged incident, they began to see that there were numerous inconsistencies in Jussie Smollett's story. And the first inconsistency that came out to me when I heard the story was that your Jussie Smollett was going out at 2 a.m. to go buy a sandwich. Now, at 2 a.m., most stores are closed, and if a celebrity usually has to go out, they usually send one of the members of their entourage to go out for them, or they go out here with people that are with them. So they usually have somebody going with them when they're on the street. So that was one of the first inconsistencies in Jussie Smollett's story that stood out to me. Now, the second inconsistency that came out to me as related to Jussie Smollett's story was him going out on one of what was considered to be the coldest days in Chicago. Now, on the day that your Jussie Smollett said that this assault took place, it was practically 26 below zero, and practically these conditions, that type of weather, nobody would be out on the street. So your Jussie Smollett, he's saying that an assault took place on one of the coldest days of the year, a day that people would be in their homes trying to avoid being out in the cold. Now, another detail that stuck out to me with Jussie Smollett's story was the fact that he said he was attacked by MAGA supporters in Chicago. Now, there are Trump supporters in the state of Illinois, but I don't believe that there are that many in the city of Chicago. Now, your Chicago is primarily a Democrat stronghold, so why would MAGA supporters be on the street at 2 a.m. in sub-zero temperatures looking for a black man to attack in a predominantly Democrat city? That's a critical question that many were raising as related to Jussie Smollett's story, as they saw many of the details he was presenting not being consistent with an assault, and that's where people started to see the cracks in Jussie Smollett's story. But your Jussie Smollett hoped that people would not see the cracks, and they would get so emotional about what happened to him that all they would do is act on their feelings as related to what he was saying and go out here and support him unconditionally without looking at the details of his story. However, once people started looking into the details of Jussie Smollett's story, they started to see that his story really was not consistent, and then that's why prosecutors wanted to come after him, because they saw that his story was not a true story. No, it was a story that we found on the investigation was created by Jussie Smollett in an effort to try to raise his profile in the media and try to generate support for him so that he could go out here and negotiate a pay raise with the producer of Empire, Lee Daniels, and also be able to get him more exposure on the show. He had hoped to use the black community as a springboard to go out here and get the support for him as related to getting the word out about him. And he had hoped to gain sympathy because as a member of the alphabet community, he could say that he was being attacked by homophobic Trump supporters. And he hoped to use that whole narrative of being attacked by homophobic Trump supporters in order to try to gain more leverage with Lee Daniels towards getting that further exposure for himself. Unfortunately, his whole story wound up falling apart, and he wound up getting charged with filing a false police report. Now, many people had fallen for his deception, including presidential candidate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who both wrote tweets sympathetic to Jussie Smollett that have now come back to bite them in the butt now that this whole case has led to your Jussie Smollett winding up being found guilty and convicted of filing a false police report. Now, when I think about this whole case of Jussie Smollett, it is one that makes me extremely angry because your Jussie Smollett shows me that he has absolutely no character whatsoever and has absolutely no ethics whatsoever by going out here and staging this whole incident where he lied about being assaulted. And by staging this incident, he put thousands and even millions of lives at risk because with America being polarized on race and polarized by then President Trump, he could have created an incident where people wound up going out here and protesting in the streets, and that could have led to somebody possibly getting injured or possibly losing their lives because with all of the MAGA supporters and groups like Black Lives Matter on both sides getting polarized by rhetoric like this, it could have created an incident where we could have had riots similar to those that transpired in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. But that didn't matter to your Jussie Smollett because he had absolutely no ethics whatsoever. And because he had absolutely no ethics whatsoever, he had no problem polarizing blacks against whites because it was all about him getting all of the green for himself and getting a big payday at the expense of black Americans. And that is what makes your Jussie Smollett, to me, a reprehensible, horrible human being because he was willing to throw black people under the bus in order to further elevate himself up to a higher position in white society. So it was all about him getting rich at our expense. It was all about him polarizing people based on race. And it was all about him going out here and getting his at the expense of black people. And he didn't care about who would get attacked in a possible whole protest or a possible riot. He didn't care about who would be injured. He didn't care because he wanted to get paid. He didn't care. He just said, oh, I'm going to talk about MAGA supporters, not understanding that the Trump base is one that is extremely polarized and extremely dangerous. And the other side, with people on the Black Lives Matter side, is polarized. And he didn't care that he was going to possibly lead to an explosive situation because it was all about him and all about his ego and all about him being a bigger star. And that just, again, shows how reprehensible his behavior was because he showed malice of forethought as he planned with those two African brothers. And he didn't care about any of the people in the black community at all. But then he wants to go out here and look for support from same said black community. That's what makes him a monster in my eyes, because so many brothers and sisters out here are actual victims of hate crimes, and many of those brothers and sisters won't be taken seriously due to this liar and his unethical behavior. And the only place that he belongs is a jail cell. Now, some in the black community believe that we need to ensure that Jussie Smollett gets a light sentence because they compare him to white people like your Karens and many others who call 911 on black people. But if you want to show that a black life matters, you have to deal with those in the black community who work against us. And Jussie Smollett was not working for us. He was using us. He was exploiting us. He was no different than those Karens who called 911 on innocent black people, because your Jussie Smollett, what he wanted to do to black people was get them emotional, get them riled up, get them put their life at risk, to see him as as a victim. But he didn't care about any of those black people's health or safety, because as somebody who has studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I can tell you that Jussie Smollett could have easily resolved these issues that he was allegedly having with his producers by going and arranging for a meeting with said producer Lee Daniels and expressing his concerns about not getting enough airtime. That if he really wanted to get a raise and airtime, he would have gone to his producer and he would have settled the conflict like that. But no, he wanted to get exposure for himself and make himself out to be this victim. And he created all of this drama, which possibly could have led to people losing their lives. And he did it all because he saw himself as the center of the world. And again, we need to show him that we don't deal with traitors like your Jussie Smollett. No, we hold them accountable by making sure that they get punished to the fullest extent of the law. Because your Jussie Smollett, as I see it, needs to be punished, because this black bootleg basically was, again, using black people to gain himself a further high status with whites, and you can't give him a pass for trying to go out here and use black people to try to go out here and get your status with whites. No, you want to go out here and be a star in Hollywood, then go out here and put in the work. And since you put in the work to put black people at risk, there's no problem of leaving you in jail for whatever term you're in. Now, this whole case it gets even more disturbing, because it shows, again, a compromise of ethics, not only with your Jussie Smollett, but those in the media like your Don Lemon. Now, your Don Lemon is alleged to have tipped off Jussie Smollett to this investigation, and that showed a compromise of his ethics at CNN, and it shows how compromised these guys are. And even worse, it shows how we have these unethical bootlicks have no honor among themselves, because now your Don Lemon is now branding Jussie Smollett a liar, even though he was the one who tipped Jussie Smollett off to the investigation. So now your Don Lemon is just as unethical as your Jussie Smollett, and while your Jussie Smollett may be going to jail, your Don Lemon may be out of a job because he was complicit with your Jussie Smollett in tipping him off as related to the news story. And it just, again, shows how these individuals are not representative of the black community. They are not about black empowerment. They are not about helping out black people. No, they are opportunists who use race in order to advance their own personal and political causes. And they are all about going out here and putting black people at risk. No, these are compromised individuals who are not about serving the interest of the black community. No, they're all about serving themselves, and that is why black people need to see these individuals punished, to send a message to others who would betray our community and betray our people and sell out our people. We need to leave these guys in the dust, because they are not about us. They are not about our cause, and they are not about helping out other black people. So when I look at your Jussie Smollett and his conviction, that's the just and right verdict, because this man did not care about black people at all. All he cared about was getting rich at our expense, and he didn't care about who wound up losing their life, who wound up getting attacked by police, who wound up getting hurt as a result of whatever protest that took place. He didn't care about it, because it was all about getting attention for himself. And once he got that attention for himself and got what he wanted from Hollywood, he would be the same kind of black man who wouldn't even pee on another black person or help out another black person in need. That is how much of a traitor your Jussie Smollett is to the black community by staging this incident, because any black person out here knows how deep the racism goes in this country, and they know that saying things like MAGA, this could really polarize people and have a big fight between blacks and whites. But that didn't matter to Jussie Smollett because he didn't care about anyone but himself. And since he doesn't care about anyone but himself, we can leave him to Bubba and Tiny, and we could care less if he is traded for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, cups of coffee, cans of Dr. Pepper, or Kit Kat candy bars. We could care less about what happens to him because he didn't care what happened to us if we were to go out here and protest as related to the lies that he was telling us about what was going on. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive SJS Direct fiction, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, or the John Haynes series, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.